Hey, slow down. You fit the profile for a visa violator we're tracking.
Excuse me?
Now.
I am a defense attorney. I work in this building.
Save the speech. You all say that. Show me your papers now.
I don't show you anything without a warrant. You are harassing me.
That's obstruction. Turn around. You're getting cuffed.
Touch me and I will bury this agency in federal court.
Stop! Right there! Blake Harrington's voice cut across the apartment lobby like a command in a hallway that didn't belong to him. He stepped into Andre King's path with the kind of certainty people reserved for uniforms and badges, even though Andre only saw a plain jacket, a clipped radio, and a posture that said the same thing, comply. Andre's left hand tightened around a thin file folder he'd carried in and out of this building for weeks. His right hand hovered near his phone, not quite raised, yet not quite surrendered either. He had been walking toward the elevators 2 minutes to a courthouse consult across town, a voicemail he still needed to return, and a client who always spiraled if Andre was late. Blake pointed at Andre's chest like he was selecting an item off a shelf. You match the profile for a visa violator we're tracking. Andre didn't flinch, but his jaw set in a way that made his cheekbones look sharper. Excuse me, he said, voice controlled. I'm a defense attorney. I work in this building. Blake's eyes flicked to Andre's folder, then back to his face, then down to Andre's hands, as if he'd already decided what story those hands were supposed to tell. Save the speech, he snapped. You all say that. Show me your papers now. This was the immediate threat Blake was positioning himself to keep Andre from the elevators, from the exit, from his own schedule, turning a normal lobby crossing into a detention. This was the accusation visa violator, a label thrown like a net. And this was the promise of payoff, the one Andre didn't say out loud, but that the building would learn soon enough within days that claim would collapse. Andre's shoulders rose, then settled. He'd learned years ago that authority figures who came in hot were looking for a tone to justify their next move. He lowered his voice on purpose. I'm not showing you anything without a warrant, Andre said. You're harassing me. A couple near the mailroom slowed. A delivery driver with a hand truck paused mid-step. And from the security desk by the glass doors, the lobby guard, an older man with a neatly pressed shirt and a nameplate that read, Martinez, looked up sharply, eyes narrowing as if he recognized the pattern before he recognized the people. Andre finally lifted his phone, not dramatic, not waving it in anyone's face, just up near his chest where the camera could see. I'm recording for my safety, he said, still calm. Blake's nostrils flared. He heard the word recording like a challenge. What the officer didn't know was that 3 phones were already up. The couple by the mailboxes had their device angled low. The delivery driver had his propped in the crook of his elbow lens, peeking over cardboard. Blake took half a step closer anyway, closing the air between them. That's obstruction, he said, as if a word could become a handcuff. His left hand went to Andre's wrist. Turn around. You're getting cuffed. Andre's mouth went dry so fast he could taste paper. A familiar heat climbed from his collarbones to his face. Not fear, exactly, something sharper, like humiliation trying to become rage. He forced his hands open, palms visible. I'm not resisting, he said. I'm requesting a supervisor. His voice didn't rise. It didn't tremble. But his throat tightened around every syllable. Blake's grip tightened anyway. The lobby changed the instant physical contact happened. People stopped pretending it was none of their business. Martinez stood up so quickly his chair skidded back. The delivery driver rolled his hand truck aside like he was clearing room for a medical emergency. Hey, Martinez called, already moving. Sir, what's going on? Blake didn't look at him. He was focused on winning face in front of witnesses. He's interfering with an enforcement stop, Blake barked loud enough for the lobby to hear, like he was narrating his own justification into existence. Andre swallowed once slow. State the reason, he said. Am I free to leave? Blake's eyes flashed. Not anymore. That was the point of no return. The visible line crossed hands on thread of cuffs. Refusal to explain right in the open where the building could see it. Andre's file folder slipped and thumped against his thigh. A corner bent. Inside it were notes for a hearing, a scribbled reminder to call a client's mother back, and the printed intake sheet for a man who'd begged Andre 2 days earlier not to let them make me disappear. Andre wasn't just late for work. He was a small hinge holding other people's lives in place. Backstory didn't arrive like a speech. It came in a flash of routine. Andre King, the overqualified one who never threw it in anyone's face. He kept extra pens in his pocket because clients always needed one. He wore the same scuffed brown shoes because they were quiet in court. The building staff knew him as the man who held the elevator when someone's arms were full, who said good morning, like it mattered who stayed late on Fridays, helping families understand forms in plain language. Blake saw none of that. He saw a target. You all say that Blake repeated like Andre's profession was just another lie in a long list he'd already filed in his head. The line was short, sharp, and captionable, exactly the kind of thing that would later come back to haunt him. Martinez arrived within a few steps, hands up in a de-escalation posture. "Sir, let him go," he said. "This is private property. If you're conducting something in the lobby, I need to know who you are." Andre kept his palms visible, but his fingers tingled. He knew what escalation looked like. If Blake got him turned around, the narrative would become physical, resisting, struggling, whatever word someone wanted to use later. Martinez Andre said, not pleading, just anchoring himself to someone with authority inside this building. "Please call your supervisor." Martinez didn't hesitate. He reached for his radio on his shoulder. "Dispatch," he said into it, voice clipped but steady. "I need a supervisor to the lobby. Possible unlawful detention in progress." The radio squawked back, audio choppy for a second, an imperfection that mattered because it delayed clarity. Martinez had to repeat himself louder, and that tiny lag gave Blake an opening. Blake jerked Andre's wrist a few inches. "Turn," he ordered again. "Now." Andre's breath came shallow. He forced air down into his belly like he was in a courtroom, like he was cross-examining panic. "I'm not resisting," he repeated. "I do not consent. I'm requesting a supervisor." The couple by the mailboxes stepped closer, not into Blake's space, but into Andre's orbit. A witness circle. Phones out, calm narration pressure without aggression. "He's not resisting," the woman said, voice clear enough to be picked up on 3 recordings. He asked why. "You didn't explain the reason," the man added. "You just grabbed him." Blake's attention snapped to them, irritation turning into calculation. "Back up," he said, tone policing, even as he escalated. "You're interfering." "No," the woman said, still calm. "We're witnessing." Andre's phone buzzed in his hand, his client calling again, and the screen light reflected in Blake's eyes for a split second. Andre's stomach dropped. If Blake took that call away, he wasn't just detaining Andre, he was cutting an attorney off from a client mid-crisis. Andre glanced toward the glass doors. Leaving would be the safest move if he could, but Blake was between him and the exit, and now Blake's hand was literally on him. The why not just leave question answered itself in the geometry of the lobby-blocked path, physical grip thread of cuffs. Leaving wasn't an option anymore. It would be reframed as flight. Blake leaned in, voice low and poisonous with certainty. "You people always think your job makes you special." Andre's eyes narrowed. He didn't take the bait. "I'm asking you to state your reason," he said, "and I want a supervisor." Martinez's radio crackled again, still imperfect. "Supervisor en route," a voice said, but it was faint, and Martinez had to tilt his head to catch it. A micro-turn hit the building's second security guard, Tasha Reynolds. Younger, sharper keys jangling came out from the back hallway. She took in the scene in one sweep, Andre's open palms. Blake's gripped 3 phones, Martinez's tense jaw. Tasha Martinez said quickly, "Stand by Andre. Keep eyes on hands. Keep witnesses safe." Tasha nodded and moved to Andre's side, not touching him, just present. "Sir," she said to Blake, firm, "you need to identify yourself to building security." Blake scoffed. "I don't answer to you." Andre's voice stayed level, but his throat burned. "Badge number," he said. "Name." Blake's lips curled. "You don't get to demand anything." "Andre does," Tasha said quietly. "As a person standing in our lobby?" Blake's hand shifted as if he was deciding whether to escalate to full cuffs right there. The air thickened. Andre felt his own heartbeat in his fingertips. Then Blake did it. He made the intimidation explicit. "If you keep running your mouth, I can make a call," he said, eyes locked on Andre, "and you'll have bigger problems than a late meeting." It was a threat wrapped in vagueness, the kind that suggested immigration consequences without naming them. The coded framing landed hard in the room. DV2 wasn't about a single word, it was about power, using standards and enforcement as cover for humiliation. Andre didn't blink. "I don't show you anything without a warrant," he repeated, and this time his voice carried. "Touch me again, and I will bury this agency in federal court." A beat of silence followed, half shock, half relief, that someone finally said the quiet part out loud. The delivery driver exhaled through his nose like he'd been holding his breath. Blake's face hardened. He hated that Andre's words sounded like confidence instead of fear. The first near loss came fast. Blake tightened his hold, twisted Andre's arm just enough to force compliance without leaving an obvious mark. Andre's knees flexed involuntarily, a small stumble that could be misread as resistance. "Don't," Tasha warned, stepping in closer. "He's not resisting." Blake snapped loud again. "Back off." Martinez moved to block Blake's line of sight to the exit, not as aggression as containment. Sir Martinez said, voice now official, "I'm instructing you to release him until my supervisor arrives." Blake turned his head slowly like he couldn't believe a security guard was speaking to him that way. "Are you refusing a federal stop?" Martinez didn't take the bait. "I'm refusing a fight in my lobby." Another micro turn, the elevator doors opened with a soft ding, and 2 residents stepped out, froze, and then stepped back in without a word. The doors started to close again. "Hold it," Andre called quick. If those doors closed, the lobby would become smaller, tighter, less public. He needed witnesses. Tasha shot her hand out and pressed the elevator button to keep it open. A tiny action with huge consequence, the space stayed porous. More people saw. One of the residents, an older woman with a grocery bag, lifted her phone without hesitation. "I'm recording," she said. Blake's eyes flicked to the growing half-circle. Witness circle pressure tightened like a net. This is the moment it turned. Not in Andre's favor, yet not clean, but the room had chosen what it was willing to tolerate. And then the viral quote landed again because Blake couldn't help himself. He looked at the phones and spat, "Put those away. You don't know what you're looking at." It wasn't a slur. It didn't need to be. It was pure contempt, short enough to live on a screen. Tasha answered without raising her volume. "We know what we're looking at," she said. "A man being grabbed for walking to the elevator." Blake's radio chirped. He pressed it, turning his body slightly away from the crowd. "Yeah," he muttered into it. "I've got a subject refusing to comply. Possible obstruction." Andre heard the shape of the lie forming. He felt it in his stomach like cold water. Martinez held his ground. "Supervisor is coming," he said to the lobby as much as to Blake. Andre's phone camera wobbled for a second. His hand shook just a little from adrenaline. The video would be shaky in that moment, an imperfection that later made the grip look less clear than it felt. Andre hated that. He hated that reality didn't always frame itself cleanly. Blake sensed that imperfection too. He leaned into the ambiguity like it was cover. "See," he snapped to the witnesses. "He's acting erratic." Andre's voice dropped, measured. "I'm calm," he said. "I'm not resisting. I want a supervisor." The lobby doors opened again, and a man in a suit stepped in with a messenger bag, building management, the kind of person who knew the difference between federal and someone saying federal. He stopped, scanned the scene, then looked at Martinez. "What's happening?" "Unlawful detention," Martinez said simply. "He says he's federal. He won't identify." He put hands on Mr. King. The suited man's eyes widened slightly at Andre's name, like it meant something. "Andre," he said, recognition flickering. Andre swallowed. "Yes, I'm a tenant attorney upstairs. I'm late for court." Blake snapped, "Stay out of it." The suited man didn't retreat. "I'm the property operations manager," he said. "You're in our lobby. Identify yourself." Blake glared. "I'm not required to." "You are the manager, cut in, still controlled. You don't get to grab people here and refuse to say who you are." Social friction sparked as a resident near the door, trying to be helpful, trying to be neutral, murmured, "Maybe he should just show them his papers and be done." Andre heard it and felt a small sting. It wasn't malice. It was fear, the old reflex to smooth things over, even if it meant swallowing humiliation. SF4 waited in the wings, the reputation trap. If Andre asserted boundaries, he'd be called difficult. If he complied, he'd validate the abuse. Andre turned his head slightly towards that resident, not angry. "If I comply without a reason," he said softly, "this becomes normal." The resident blinked, absorbing the weight of it. Backstory returned in a second insert, small but sharp. Andre had built his career on being the calm one. He'd been told in law school that he was articulate, like it was a surprise. He'd been told by older attorneys to pick your battles, like dignity was a luxury item. He'd learned to stand in rooms where people assumed he was staff until he spoke. He never raised his voice because he knew how quickly emotion would be used against him. Blake didn't care about any of that. He cared about control, and control in that moment required escalation. Blake shifted behind Andre, trying to angle him toward the wall like a standard cuffing position. Andre's stomach dropped. His mind flashed to the most dangerous thing about handcuffs, once they were on the story, belonged to the person holding the key. Tasha stepped closer, hands out, not touching. "Sir," she said, "stop moving him." Blake snapped back up, "Or I'll have you removed too." The operations manager lifted his phone. "I'm calling City Risk Management," he said, voice level. "And Building Council." Blake's head jerked toward him. "You can't." "I can," the manager said. "Watch me." Another micro-turn, the lobby intercom chimed an automated announcement about package deliveries. It partially drowned out a few words as Blake muttered into his radio again. And that small audio confusion later mattered, because one witness thought Blake said "ease," while another thought he said "enforcement." The PA didn't create evidence. It created uncertainty that had to be resolved by the consistent parts of the story. Martinez leaned toward Andre, low voice. "Andre, are you hurt?" Andre's lips parted, then closed. He realized his pride was trying to answer for him. He forced honesty. "My wrist," he said. "He's twisting it." Martinez nodded once. "Copy." The supervisor arrived through the lobby doors like a tide of authority. Renee Caldwell, the building security supervisor, hair pulled back, eyes already hard with focus. She took one look at the scene phones, upstaff tense. Andre's hands opened Blake's grip. "Release him," Renee said immediately, "not a request." Blake turned toward her, irritated. "Who are you?" Security supervisor Renee said. "This is private property. You are done putting hands on anyone in this lobby." Blake squared his shoulders. "I'm conducting federal enforcement." Renee didn't blink. "Then identify yourself to me and building management right now." Blake's face tightened. "I don't have to." Renee's tone stayed even. "You do, or you leave. If you refuse, you will be treated as an unidentified person assaulting a resident." That sentence did something. It reframed the power. Not Andre versus federal, not citizen versus agency. It made Blake what he was in that moment, a man with a grip on another man's wrist, refusing to identify himself. Blake hesitated just long enough for witnesses to notice. Andre's phone caught it. The wobble steadied. His breathing slowed. Renee nodded once at Tasha. "Call police," she said, "not dramatic, just procedural. And get the building attorney on the line." Blake's eyes flared. "You're calling local on a federal stop?" "I'm calling for a person being restrained," Renee said. "And I'm calling counsel because we're preserving statements." That was the second payoff breadcrumb, the preservation step being spoken out loud. The kind of thing that later mattered, because it showed intent to document, not to perform. Blake's grip loosened fractionally. Andre felt it and didn't move suddenly. "Am I free to leave?" he asked, voice steady. Blake's jaw worked. "No," he said, but it sounded less certain now. Renee stepped closer until she was within arm's reach of Blake's hand. "Release him," she repeated, slower. Blake looked around. He saw the witness circle. He saw the operations manager on the phone, face turned away, already speaking to someone with a title. He saw Martinez's radio up, ready to relay. He saw Renee, who looked like she'd written a dozen incident reports and knew exactly how to describe this. Blake made a choice. He let go. Andre's wrist pulsed with pain, but he didn't rub it. He kept his hands visible, kept his phone up, kept his posture calm. He felt the urge to step back to create space, but he also knew space could be narrated as retreat. He stayed planted. Renee turned her head to Andre, voice softening just a shade. "Sir, are you okay?" Andre swallowed. "No," he said. "But I'm here. I want his name. I want a supervisor from his side." Blake laughed once forced. "This is going to go badly for you." Andre's eyes locked on his. "It already is," Andre said quietly. "Just not for me." A micro-turn, 2 uniformed city police officers arrived at the glass doors, guided in by the operations manager. They stepped into the lobby with hands relaxed, eyes scanning. "Who called?" the taller officer asked. Renee raised her hand. "I did," she said. "We have an unidentified individual who put hands on a resident and refused to identify himself to security." Blake snapped, "I'm federal." The officer nodded once, neutral. "Name." Blake hesitated. Then, like he was swallowing pride, he said Blake Harrington. Andre repeated it out loud, capturing it for the record. "Blake Harrington." Renee looked at the officers. He accused Mr. King of being a visa violator and attempted to cuff him without presenting any warrant or explaining the reason. Blake's face reddened. He obstructed. Andre's tone stayed plain. "I asked if I was free to leave. I requested a supervisor. I did not resist." The woman with the mailboxes spoke up, calm narration like a metronome. He asked why, she said. The man grabbed him first. The delivery driver nodded, and he said, "You all say that," like it didn't matter. The viral quote had roots now. It wasn't just a line, it was a witnessed behavior. Blake lifted his chin. "I can detain anyone I reasonably suspect." The taller officer cut him off gently. "I'm not here to debate your authority," he said. "I'm here because someone called about hands on a resident. Do you have documentation with you?" Blake's eyes flicked toward the door as if he considered leaving. Then his radio chirped again, and he pressed it voice tight. "I need my supervisor to this location," he said. Renee nodded at the operations manager. "Keep everyone here," she said. "Statements while it's fresh." Andre's stomach rolled. He realized how close he'd come to being cuffed, escorted out, maybe even booked his client waiting the court hearing. Proceeding without him, the narrative set before he could speak. The near loss hit him, now delayed. His legs felt weak. He forced them steady. Another micro-turn, Blake's supervisor arrived. Nia Strickland, brisk eyes, sharp suit, jacket, open credentials, clipped in a way that signaled organizational confidence. She stepped in, took in the scene in one sweep, then looked directly at Blake. "What happened?" she asked him. Blake started fast defensive. Subject matched a profile. Refused to provide papers. Obstructed. Nia's eyes moved to Andre. Sir, she said, tone professional, state your name. Andre King, Andre said. Defense attorney, tenant. I was walking to the elevator when your agent detained me, demanded papers, refused to state a reason, then grabbed me and threatened cuffs. Nia's jaw tightened slightly at threatened cuffs. She looked to Renee. Your role. Security Supervisor Renee said, I ordered your agent to release him. He initially refused to identify himself. Nia's gaze snapped back to Blake. You refused to identify? Blake's mouth opened, then closed. I didn't think it was necessary. Silence spread. It wasn't dramatic. It was the kind of quiet where phones stop wobbling because hands become steady. The witness circle held their breath. The police officers looked at each other, and then back at Nia. Even Blake's shoulders seemed to stiffen as if his body realized it had walked into a different arena. This was the freeze moment, truth landing, everyone hearing it in the same shape. Nia looked at Blake like she was seeing him clearly for the first time. Did you have a warrant? She asked. Blake's eyes flicked away. No. Nia's voice stayed even, but it carried the weight of consequence. Did you state a reason for detention beyond profile? Blake hesitated. We had information. Nia turned toward the witnesses. Ma'am, she said to the woman by the mailboxes, what did you hear? The woman didn't embellish. He said you matched the profile for a visa violator we're tracking. Then you all say that? Then turn around, you're getting cuffed. The words hung in the air like a transcript nobody wanted to own. Nia's gaze returned to Blake. Did you say, you all say that? Blake's face tightened. It's common people lie. Nia nodded slowly, as if she was writing the sentence into her head for later. Noted. Andre's breathing finally deepened. The heat in his face cooled slightly. He felt his dignity returning 1 inch at a time, not as a gift, because the room was doing what institutions were supposed to do when confronted with abuse. Check it. Renee spoke precise. We are preserving footage and statements. Nia's eyes flicked to her. Good, she said. Then she turned to Andre. Mr. King, are you injured? My wrist hurts, Andre said, and I need medical aid if it worsens. But right now I need to go to court. Nia nodded once. You are free to leave. Blake's head snapped toward her. Supervisor. Nia raised her hand, stopping him without touching him. No, she said. You are done for today. A micro turn, the taller police officer stepped slightly closer to Blake. Not aggressive, just a reminder of presence. Sir, he said, if he's free to leave, you need to step back. Blake's jaw worked, but he stepped back. Andre moved toward the elevator, slowly controlled, refusing to sprint like a guilty man running. Tasha kept the elevator open again. Martinez stood near Andre like a buffer. The witness circle didn't dissolve. It shifted, escorting with eyes. Andre stepped into the elevator, then turned back, phone still recording. I want your name on record, he said to Nia, and I want a written confirmation that I was unlawfully detained. Nia nodded. You will receive a statement from counsel, she said, and an incident report from building security. We will coordinate. Andre's throat tightened again, this time with something like gratitude. Not soft gratitude, sturdy gratitude. Institutional backbone. The doors closed, and Andre finally let himself exhale. Downstairs, the scene didn't end. It transitioned into process. Renee gathered witnesses in a semicircle by the desk. The operations manager took names and contact numbers, carefully, not like gossip, like evidence. Short statements, he said, just what you saw and heard. The woman by the mailboxes spoke into the manager's phone recorder, calm and consistent. The delivery driver did the same. Martinez recited his account in clear sentences, emphasizing one thing over and over: Andre's open palms, the lack of resistance, Blake's grip. Nia stood a few steps away, watching Blake. Blake's face had gone blank, like he was trying to preserve dignity by removing expression. Another micro-turn. Nia's phone rang. She answered and stepped aside. Yes, she said. I'm on scene. A pause. We have witnesses. Another pause. Yes, counsel. When she returned, her posture had shifted. Less protective of Blake, more protective of the institution from Blake. Blake, she said low enough that it felt private, but loud enough for the officers to hear, you're going to write a statement. Then you're leaving. You will not contact Mr. King. Blake's lips curled. He threatened to sue. Nia's eyes narrowed. He said he would bury the agency in federal court. She replied, repeating the exact phrase like it mattered that she'd heard it. Given what you did, that is a predictable response. The boomerang landed. The viral quote had come back not in a comment section, not in a montage, but in a supervisor's mouth as part of an accountability frame. Blake stiffened. So you're taking his side? I'm taking the side of reality, Nia said. The police officers remained neutral, but their eyes tracked the power shift. They'd seen enough scenes where everyone protected the wrong person. The operations manager's phone buzzed again. He nodded to Renee. City risk manager is on, he said, then put the call on speaker briefly, so the room could hear the seriousness without hearing private details. A calm voice came through. Preserve all footage. Collect witness statements. Do not delete anything. We will coordinate with legal counsel. Renee nodded. Understood. That was the institutional backbone in motion risk management, taking it seriously, building security, acting as a system, a supervisor acknowledging harm instead of denying it, and counsel engaged early to preserve records and reduce retaliation. Upstairs, Andre reached the hallway outside his office and leaned one shoulder against the wall for a second. His hands trembled now that the danger had passed. He flexed his wrist and winced. He took a breath, then another, then stepped inside. His assistant looked up, eyes wide. Andre, what happened? You're late. Andre didn't sit. Call the courthouse, he said. Tell them I'm on my way. And call the building manager. I need a copy of any incident report. Also, he paused, swallowing the taste of adrenaline. I need ice. His assistant didn't ask questions. She moved. Andre looked at his own phone screen. The recording was still running. He stopped it carefully like it was fragile. Later, when Andre arrived at court, he stood in front of a judge and did what he always did, spoke for someone else. His wrist pulsed with each gesture, but his voice didn't crack. The aftermath began in layers, not fireworks. First came the building's written statement clearing Andre's presence and conduct sent to him by the operations manager with a short message. We saw it. We logged it. We have you. It wasn't poetic. It was backbone. Then came a meeting in a conference room where Andre sat with building management on one side and a city risk manager on the other. Andre wore the same scuffed brown shoes. His folder sat in front of him, corner. Still bent, proof that this had happened in his real life, not on a screen. We're not here to silence you, the risk manager said. We're here to address exposure and harm. Andre's voice was calm, but his hands tightened on a pen. I don't care about your exposure, he said. I care that your agent can grab someone in a lobby and call it a profile. The risk manager nodded once. Understood. Nia Strickland attended that meeting too, eyes steady. Blake Harrington did not. A second meeting followed with federal legal counsel present by phone named Roll Only, no theatrics, just the tone of people who knew paper trails could become lawsuits. Andre listened jaw tight and answered questions in plain language. He didn't perform anger. He described actions. Did he tell you you were under arrest, counsel asked. He said I was getting cuffed, Andre replied. He grabbed my wrist and tried to turn me. Did you resist? No. Did you ask for a supervisor? Yes. The story was becoming a record. Over the next days, the rumor mill tried to do what it always did, sand down the edges to make everyone comfortable. A colleague at the courthouse pulled Andre aside and murmured, You know they'll call you difficult, right? Andre felt the reputation trap snap shut around him, and he opened it with one sentence. If being difficult means I don't get grabbed in my own building, he said, then I can live with that. That line spread quietly, spoken not as a slogan but as permission. The building updated its security procedures without fanfare. Renee trained her team on a simple rule: any law enforcement or federal agent attempting an enforcement action in the lobby had to identify to security leadership first, and any physical contact with a tenant triggered immediate supervisor response and documentation. No statute numbers, no policy citations, just plain practical boundaries. City Risk Management set up a direct complaint intake route for incidents involving contracted or visiting enforcement activity in public-facing buildings, so residents weren't forced to guess where to report. And on Blake Harrington's side, the institution did what institutions hated doing. It documented, reviewed, and constrained. Andre's attorney? Yes, even attorneys hire attorneys, filed a formal notice that the incident had created harm and exposure. It wasn't an internet tantrum. It was a structured complaint backed by witness statements and preserved footage, asking for corrective action and resolution. Blake didn't vanish into a movie ending. He didn't get marched off in cuffs. Reality doesn't do clean catharsis. But it did do something else. It put his choices under lights he couldn't switch off. Weeks later, Andre sat again across from the city risk manager and a federal liaison listening to language that sounded careful, because it was. The resolution was quiet, but weighty. A settlement that included formal acknowledgement training requirements and a transparency step that forced reporting instead of burying. Andre didn't grin. He didn't celebrate. He exhaled like someone setting down a weight he'd been forced to carry. In the end, the most satisfying part wasn't money. It was the written confirmation that he had been treated wrong and that people with titles had been required to respond. And when Andre walked through the lobby again at 1734 Fairview Boulevard, the space felt different. Not because danger was gone, but because the building had learned how to show spine in public. Martinez nodded at him from the desk. Morning, Mr. King. Andre nodded back. Morning. Tasha lifted 2 fingers in a small salute. Renee stood nearby, watching the flow of people with a supervisor's gaze that made the lobby feel less like a trap and more like a place with rules. Andre stepped toward the elevator folder under his arm phone in his pocket. His wrist still ached sometimes when the weather shifted an inconvenient memory. But the next time someone tried to turn profile into permission, they would find the same thing Blake Harrington found: witnesses' records, supervisors, and an institution that, when pressed, could choose backbone over convenience. What happened to Andre King is the kind of moment people try to wave away as misunderstanding, but the pattern is always the same: a vague accusation, a demand for compliance, and an escalation designed to punish calm boundary setting. First, if you're stopped, keep your voice low and your hands visible, and ask plainly what the reason is and whether you're free to leave. Next, request a supervisor early, and repeat that request without arguing about legal technicalities, because supervision changes behavior faster than debate. Then, if it's safe, create proof pressure by having witnesses, record, narrate calmly, and ask the authority figure to identify themselves, since accountability often begins with a name. After that, document what you remember as soon as you can, including who was present and what was said, and seek medical attention if you feel pain that could worsen. Finally, route complaints through institutional channels that have leveraged security leadership, building, management, risk management, HR, and legal counsel, because collective solidarity plus formal records is how change becomes enforceable instead of optional. Some elements are selectively fictionalized for education.